The scent of ash and pine filled my lungs as I stumbled through the forest, my bare feet catching on exposed roots and jagged stones. Cold autumn air rushed against my skin, but I barely felt it. Being an Omega meant always feeling cold anyway, especially when you've been cast out from your pack like yesterday's garbage. My threadbare dress clung to my thin frame, still damp from where River, our pack's most vicious female, had accidentally pushed me into the stream during the morning gathering. I touched the silver pendant hanging around my neck. My mother's last gift before she died. The crescent moon etched into its surface had almost worn away from years of my anxious fingers tracing its outline. Even in your darkest night, remember that the moon still watches, she'd whispered to me. It was all I had left of her, and the only thing I'd managed to grab when they'd given me 2 hours to leave the pack house. The rejection had come swiftly, brutally. I'd always known I was different, even for an Omega. Too quiet, too observant, lacking the proper submission expected from my rank. The official reason was incompatibility with pack dynamics, but everyone knew the truth. Omegas were meant to serve, not think. And I thought too much. My new home was a small cabin on the very edge of Stone Creek Pack territory, technically still within our borders, but far enough that no one would have to look at me. A kindness, Alpha Vincent had called it, allowing me to remain rather than forcing me into the dangerous life of a lone wolf. His eyes had been cold when he'd said it, his mate Selena smirking behind him. Everyone knew it wasn't kindness. It was the pack laws that prevented them from casting out a pack-born wolf completely without cause. And discomfort wasn't enough cause, even for an Omega. I paused, lifting my nose to the air. Something was wrong. The forest smelled different. Through the typical sense of earth and animal and green things, there was something acrid and threatening. Smoke. My steps quickened, heart suddenly pounding. Fire in the forest was everyone's enemy, wolf and human alike. Pack law dictated that all wolves must respond to threats against the territory, regardless of status. Even rejected, I remained bound to that duty. I followed my nose, moving deeper into the forest rather than toward the safety of my cabin. The smoke grew thicker, catching in my throat and making my eyes water. Then I heard it. A high, terrified wail. A child. Breaking into a run, I pushed through a dense copse of trees, emerging into a small clearing. At its center stood an old woodsman's shelter, flames licking up its sides, smoke pouring from the windows. The cry came again, desperate and afraid. Without thought, I ran toward the burning structure. Heat blasted against my face as I approached, making it hard to breathe. The door was partially blocked by a fallen beam, but my slight frame allowed me to slip past it into the inferno. Inside, the smoke was so thick I could barely see. Dropping to my hands and knees, I crawled forward, following the sounds of frightened crying. My lungs burned, my eyes streamed tears, but I pressed on, finally reaching a small back room. There, huddled in the corner, was a little boy, no more than 3 years old. His dark hair and striking green eyes were instantly recognizable, even to someone who kept to the fringes of pack life. This was Leo, the Alpha's son, the future leader of Stone Creek Pack. "I've got you," I whispered, reaching for him. "Come here, little one." He shrank back, eyes wide with terror. "Hot," he whimpered. "Scary." "I know," I said, trying to keep my voice calm despite the crackling of flames growing louder. "But I'm going to get you out. We have to be brave, okay?" A crash sounded behind me, part of the ceiling collapsing. We had minutes, maybe less. "Do you know who I am?" I asked, inching closer. He nodded, his little face smudged with soot. "The quiet lady. Daddy says you're different." A bitter smile crossed my lips. "That's right, I'm different. And different is good today, because I'm going to save you, but you have to trust me." Leo hesitated for only a moment, before lunging forward into my arms, his little body trembling. I wrapped him tightly against me, then pulled off my shawl and covered his head and face. "Keep this over your mouth and nose," I instructed, "and close your eyes. Don't open them until I tell you." The way back seemed twice as long, the heat more intense with each passing second. A burning rafter fell, grazing my shoulder. I bit back a scream, not wanting to frighten Leo further. Pain seared through me, but I kept moving, one arm cradling the child, the other feeling my way through the smoke-filled death trap. When we finally burst through the doorway into the clean forest air, I gulped it down gratefully, my lungs screaming in relief. Leo coughed against my chest, but he was breathing. He was alive. I carried him away from the burning building, not stopping until we reached a safe distance. Only then did I set him down gently on a fallen log, unwrapping the shawl from his face. "You can open your eyes now," I said softly. Those green eyes, so like his father's, blinked open, still filled with fear, but now also with something else, wonder. "You saved me," he said simply, as if stating a remarkable fact that he couldn't quite comprehend. I nodded, suddenly aware of the pain radiating from my burned shoulder and the raw feeling in my throat. "What were you doing out here alone, Leo? This is far from the pack house." His little face crumpled. "I was playing hide-and-seek with Mommy's friend." He said, "Count to 100. I did. He was gone." My blood ran cold. Someone had left the Alpha's son alone in the forest, in an old shelter that was clearly a fire hazard. This wasn't an accident. This was deliberate. Before I could question him further, a howl pierced the air, the alert call of the pack's sentries. They had noticed the fire. Within minutes, the clearing would be swarming with pack members. "Leo, listen to me," I said urgently, kneeling to meet his eyes. "When your father comes, you need to tell him exactly what happened, about the man who left you here. Can you do that?" He nodded solemnly, his small hand reaching out to grasp mine. The gesture, so innocent and trusting, made my throat tighten with emotion. This child didn't see me as a rejected Omega. He saw me as his rescuer. The sound of running footsteps and voices approached rapidly. I stood, preparing to step away. Pack protocol demanded that an Omega remain at a respectful distance from higher ranks, especially from the Alpha family. Despite saving Leo, I was still bound by those rules, but as I tried to move back, Leo's grip on my hand tightened. "Stay," he pleaded, his eyes wide. "I'm scared." How could I refuse him? I sank back down beside him on the log, his small hand clutched in mine, and waited as the pack members burst into the clearing. The first to arrive were the enforcers, the pack's protectors. They took in the scene with shocked expressions. The burning shelter, the Alpha's son, and me, the rejected Omega, sitting together. Then he arrived. Alpha Nathaniel Stone crashed through the tree line like a force of nature, his powerful frame radiating fury and fear. At 35, he was in his prime, tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair, and those same piercing green eyes that his son had inherited, eyes that now fixed on me with an intensity that made my wolf cower inside me. "Leo!" he roared, rushing toward us. The little boy released my hand and ran to his father, who scooped him up in a crushing embrace, burying his face in his son's hair. "Daddy!" "The lady saved me from the hot." Nathaniel's eyes met mine over his son's head, confusion warring with something unreadable in his expression. I lowered my gaze immediately, as was proper for my rank. "What happened?" he demanded, his voice slightly less harsh but still carrying the unmistakable timbre of an Alpha command. I winced as the command compelled me to answer, even as rejected as I was. I smelled smoke, Alpha. When I found the source, I heard Leo crying inside. I went in and brought him out. "She saved me," Leo repeated insistently. The man was gone. He said count and was gone. Nathaniel stiffened. "What man, Leo? What are you talking about?" As Leo began explaining in his halting toddler way about the game of hide-and-seek, I took the opportunity to retreat further, putting proper distance between myself and the pack leadership now arriving in waves. Selena, the Alpha female, rushed to her son, checking him over frantically while shooting venomous glances my way. My presence was no longer required. I had done my duty to the pack by saving one of its members, even if that member happened to be the Alpha's son and heir. Now it was time to disappear back to my isolated cabin before anyone remembered to question why an Omega had been wandering so close to this part of the territory in the first place. I slipped away while attention was focused on Leo, my burned shoulder throbbing painfully with each step. The forest, which had felt threatening just an hour ago, now seemed to welcome me back, offering shadows to hide my retreat. But I had gone no more than 50 yards when a voice stopped me cold. "Omega, wait," The command in that deep voice froze me in place. I turned slowly, keeping my eyes downcast as Alpha Nathaniel approached. Though I didn't look at his face, I could feel his scrutiny like a physical touch, assessing every inch of my soot-stained, bedraggled appearance. "You're injured," he said, his tone oddly flat. I touched my shoulder self-consciously. "It's nothing, Alpha. Just a burn. You went into a burning building to save my son." It wasn't a question, but I nodded anyway, unsure what response he expected. A heavy silence stretched between us. I risked a glance upward and found him staring at me with an intensity that made my heart stutter. There was calculation in that gaze, and something else I couldn't identify. "What is your name?" he finally asked. The question stunned me. I had been part of Stone Creek Pack all my life, born and raised here. Yet the Alpha didn't even know my name. It confirmed how truly invisible I had been. "Eleanor," I replied softly. "Eleanor Gray." He nodded once, as if committing it to memory. "Report to the pack house tomorrow morning. The pack doctor will treat your injuries." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving me standing alone among the trees, confusion and a strange sense of foreboding washing over me. Alphas didn't concern themselves with the welfare of rejected Omegas. Something had changed in that moment, something fundamental, but I couldn't begin to guess what it meant. As I finally made my way back to my lonely cabin, my mother's pendant felt heavier against my chest. "Even in your darkest night, remember that the moon still watches," I whispered to myself, fingers tracing the worn silver. Tonight it seemed the moon had been watching very closely indeed. Sleep evaded me that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I relived the inferno, the searing heat, the choking smoke, little Leo's terrified face. When dawn finally broke, I rose exhausted, my burned shoulder a constant throbbing reminder of yesterday's events. The mirror revealed what I already knew. I looked terrible. Soot still clung to my pale blonde hair despite my attempts to wash it out in the cabin's rusty sink. Dark circles shadowed my eyes, and the burn on my shoulder had blistered overnight, an angry red against my fair skin. I had no healing salves left, another reminder of how precarious life on the pack's margins had become. As I dressed in my least shabby clothes, a simple blue dress that had once belonged to my mother, anxiety gnawed at my stomach. The Alpha had commanded me to report to the pack house. After 6 months of rejection and isolation, I was being summoned back to the heart of the pack. Nothing good ever came from such summons for an Omega. The walk to the pack house took nearly an hour from my remote cabin. With each step, memories flooded back. The childhood spent learning to make myself useful. The teenage years realizing that no amount of usefulness would ever make me truly belong. And finally, the crushing moment of my rejection. "Pack dynamics require harmony," Alpha Vincent had said. "And you, Eleanor, create disharmony simply by existing." His son, Nathaniel, had stood silently beside him that day, newly returned from years away establishing alliances with neighboring packs. He had not spoken during my rejection ceremony, his green eyes coolly assessing as his father pronounced my sentence. I had wondered, briefly, if the son might be different from the father, but his silence had been answer enough. The same son who now ruled as Alpha since Vincent's death last winter. The same son who had ordered me to the pack house. As the massive log structure came into view, my footsteps slowed. The pack house was the center of Stone Creek life, a sprawling building that housed the Alpha family and many of the higher-ranking wolves. I had never lived there, of course. Omegas resided in the outer rings of pack housing, close enough to serve but far enough not to intrude. 2 enforcers stood guard at the entrance. Their eyes widened slightly at my approach, the rejected Omega daring to approach the sacred center. I kept my gaze lowered. "Alpha Nathaniel ordered me to report to the doctor," I said quietly. They exchanged glances before one nodded curtly. Through the main hall, then left corridor to the infirmary. "Don't deviate." The warning was unnecessary. I had no desire to wander where I didn't belong. Slipping past them, I entered the pack house for the first time since my rejection. The main hall was mercifully empty this early in the morning. Pack members would be at breakfast in the communal dining room, leaving me to navigate the silent hallways alone. I hurried toward the infirmary, eager to get this obligation over with so I could return to my solitude. Dr. Morris looked up in surprise when I entered his domain. The old beta had served as pack doctor for decades. his gentle hands and kind eyes a stark contrast to the harshness I usually encountered. "Eleanor," he said, recognition softening his face. "I heard about what you did yesterday. Brave thing that." I shifted uncomfortably under his praise. "I just did what anyone would do." He shook his head, gesturing for me to sit on the examination table. "Not anyone would run into a burning building. Let me see that shoulder." As he treated my burns with gentle efficiency, applying a cooling salve and bandaging the worst areas, Dr. Morris kept up a steady stream of pack news, information I had been deprived of in my isolation. I drank it in thirstily, though I tried not to show how much I had missed this connection to pack life. "There," he said finally, stepping back to inspect his work. "That should heal nicely. You were lucky it wasn't worse." Before I could respond, the infirmary door swung open. I didn't need to turn to know who had entered. The immediate stiffening of Dr. Morris's posture and the way my own wolf cowered inside me was enough. "Leave us," came the deep command. Dr. Morris bowed slightly and exited without a word, closing the door behind him. I remained perched on the edge of the examination table, eyes fixed on my worn boots, heart hammering against my ribs. Alpha Nathaniel moved into my field of vision, his presence filling the small room. He wore the casual authority of a man born to lead, dark jeans and a simple black t-shirt that did nothing to disguise the power in his tall frame. "Your shoulder?" he asked. "Much better. Thank you for allowing me to see the doctor." My voice came out steadier than I expected. He made a non-committal sound, then fell silent. I could feel his eyes on me, studying, assessing. The silence stretched until it became unbearable. "If that's all, Alpha, I should return to my cabin." I slid cautiously from the table, still not meeting his gaze. "I've spoken with my son at length about yesterday," he said abruptly. "Leo says you saved his life." I swallowed hard. "Anyone would have—" "No," he cut me off. "Anyone would not have. The shelter was fully engulfed when my enforcers arrived. They deemed it too dangerous to enter." His voice took on an edge. "Yet you and Omega went in alone." There was accusation in his tone. Or was it confusion? I couldn't tell. "I heard a child crying," I said simply. Nothing else mattered. Something shifted in his stance, almost imperceptible. "Leo also told me about the man who left him there. A game of hide-and-seek." My head snapped up at that, forgetting protocol in my alarm. "Has he been found? The man who abandoned Leo?" Our eyes met, and for a heartbeat, I forgot to look away. His green eyes, so like his son's, widened slightly at my direct gaze, but he didn't reprimand me. "Not yet," he said grimly. "But we will find him. This was not an accident, Eleanor. Someone deliberately placed my son in danger." The use of my name sent an odd shiver through me. I dropped my eyes again, remembering my place. "Leo has been asking for you," he continued, surprising me. "He's quite insistent on thanking his rescuer properly." "That's not necessary." "Nevertheless," he interrupted, "you will join us for dinner tonight." My head jerked up again in shock. "Dinner? With the Alpha family?" I couldn't possibly— "This is not a request." His tone brooked no argument, though it lacked the harshness I expected. 7 o'clock. Someone will escort you from your cabin." Before I could formulate a response, the infirmary door opened again, and a familiar figure stepped inside. Selena Stone, former alpha female, now dowager since her husband's death, stood framed in the doorway, her perfect features arranged in a mask of cold disdain. "Nathaniel," she said, deliberately ignoring my presence, "the council members have arrived for your meeting." "Thank you, Mother," he replied, his voice taking on a formal edge. "I'll be there shortly." Selena's gaze flicked to me, her lip curling slightly. "What is she doing here?" "Eleanor saved Leo's life," Nathaniel stated flatly. "She was injured in the process." "How fortunate we had an Omega wandering so close to the fire," Selena said, her implication clear in her tone. "One might almost think it was convenient." I flinched at the accusation, but Nathaniel's response was immediate and cutting. "One might almost think you're suggesting that the wolf who rescued your grandson at risk to her own life had something to do with endangering him in the first place." His voice was deadly quiet. "Is that what you're implying, Mother?" Selena's confidence faltered momentarily before she recovered with a tight smile. "Of course not. I'm merely commenting on the coincidence." "There are no coincidences when it comes to attempts on my son's life," Nathaniel replied. "Now, if you'll excuse us, I was just finishing a private conversation with Eleanor." The dismissal was clear. Selena's eyes narrowed, but she retreated with a stiff nod, closing the door a bit too forcefully behind her. When she was gone, I released a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "Your mother doesn't want me at dinner. My mother doesn't make these decisions anymore." Nathaniel moved toward the door, then paused, looking back at me with an unreadable expression. 7 o'clock, Eleanor. Don't make me send enforcers to bring you." Then he was gone, leaving me alone in the suddenly empty-feeling infirmary. I made my way back through the pack house in a daze, ignoring the curious and occasionally hostile glances from pack members I passed. News traveled fast in a wolf pack. Everyone would know by now that the rejected Omega had saved the Alpha's son. What they made of that information, and of my summoning to the Alpha's table, was written clearly in their expressions: suspicion, confusion, resentment. Outside, the autumn air felt clean against my face after the suffocating tension of the pack house. I hurried back toward my cabin, desperate for the sanctuary of my own small space to process what had just happened. But when I arrived, I found I wasn't alone. River and 2 of her cronies, all high-ranking females, lounged against the porch railing. Their postures were relaxed, but their eyes held predatory intent. "Well, well," River drawled as I approached, "if it isn't our little hero." I tried to walk past them to my door, but River shifted to block my path. At 27, she was a few years older than me, with striking features and a cruelty that seemed bone-deep. "I'm just trying to get to my door," I said quietly. "Of course you are," she smiled, the expression never reaching her cold eyes. "After your big morning at the pack house. Tell me, Eleanor, how exactly did you know where the Alpha's son would be? Quite the coincidence that you were wandering so far from your little exile, isn't it?" The echo of Selena's insinuation made my stomach clench. I smelled smoke and followed it. That's all, she mimicked. "And now you're having dinner with the Alpha. Moving up in the world for a rejected nothing, aren't you?" One of the other females, Trisha, I thought her name was, snickered. "Maybe she's hoping to replace Sophia." The name sent a pang through me. Everyone knew about Sophia, the beautiful beta wolf from the neighboring Silver Lake pack, who was all but officially engaged to Alpha Nathaniel. The alliance would strengthen both packs, and Sophia's strength and breeding made her an ideal alpha female. "An Omega replacing a beta?" River laughed harshly. "Don't be ridiculous. She's probably just being questioned as a suspect." "I saved his son," I said, a rare flare of anger giving me courage. "I would never hurt a child." River stepped closer, using her superior height to loom over me. "Let me make something very clear, little Omega. Whatever you think you're gaining from this little hero act, it won't last. You were rejected for a reason. You don't belong here, and you never will." She reached out suddenly, fingers closing around my mother's pendant. I gasped as she yanked it, the chain cutting into my neck before breaking. "Pretty trinket," she said, dangling it before my eyes. "A keepsake?" "Please," I whispered, my momentary courage evaporating. It was my mother's. Something malicious gleamed in her eyes as she tossed the pendant to one of her friends. "Maybe we should keep it safe for you." Omegas are always losing things, aren't they? I lunged forward without thinking, desperate to reclaim my only inheritance. River's hand shot out, shoving me backward. I stumbled, pain flaring in my injured shoulder as I hit the porch railing. "Careful," she said with mock concern. "We wouldn't want the Alpha's dinner guest to get hurt, would we?" Tears of pain and helplessness burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Crying would only entertain them more. "What's going on here?" The deep voice cut through the tension like a knife. All 4 of us froze, then turned to see Logan, the Alpha's second, standing at the edge of the clearing. His imposing frame and the authority in his stance had an immediate effect. River and her friends straightened, their expressions shifting from malice to careful neutrality. "Just welcoming Eleanor back," River said smoothly. "We heard about her heroism." Logan's eyes, dark and perceptive, moved from River to me, taking in my defensive posture and pained expression. Is that so? He extended his hand toward River's friend. Then you won't mind returning what you took. The woman hesitated, then dropped my pendant into his outstretched palm with a forced smile. Just admiring it. I'm sure, Logan replied dryly. Now, I believe the Alpha has scheduled training exercises for all enforcers and senior pack members. That would include you three. It was a dismissal, and they knew it. With final glares thrown my way, they slunk off into the forest, River's parting words floating back to me. See you at dinner, Eleanor. When they were gone, Logan approached, holding out my mother's pendant. The chain was broken, but the crescent moon itself was undamaged. Thank you, I said, taking it carefully, curling my fingers protectively around the silver. Logan studied me with an expression I couldn't interpret. Are you all right? I nodded, though my shoulder throbbed and humiliation burned in my chest. The Alpha sent me to inform you that dinner has been moved to 8, he said, his tone professional but not unkind. And to ensure you had suitable attire. I blinked in confusion. Suitable attire? Logan's mouth twitched, in what might have been amusement. His words, not mine. There's a package inside your cabin. He gestured toward my door. I'll return to escort you at 7:30. And with that, he turned to leave, then paused. What you did for Leo, running into that fire, it was either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish. Is there a difference? I asked softly. For the first time, a genuine smile crossed his stern features. Perhaps not, he conceded. Either way, it has the Alpha's attention. That's rarely a comfortable place to be. As he disappeared back into the forest, I clutched my broken pendant and stared at my cabin door, wondering what waited inside, and what waited for me at dinner with the Alpha. Inside my cabin, a large box wrapped in simple brown paper sat on my bed. I approached it cautiously, as though it might contain something dangerous rather than the promised suitable attire. With hesitant fingers, I unwrapped the package and lifted the lid. I gasped. Nestled in tissue paper lay a dress of deep emerald silk, the color of pine forests, the color of Alpha Nathaniel's eyes. I lifted it carefully, the fabric whispering through my fingers like water. It was simple but elegant, with a modest neckline and flowing skirt. Beside it lay a small velvet box. Inside, I found a delicate silver chain, stronger and finer than the broken one that had held my mother's pendant. The implications sent my mind spinning. This was no loaned outfit. This was a gift. Alphas didn't give gifts to Omegas, especially not rejected ones. What game was Nathaniel Stone playing? With shaking hands, I threaded my crescent moon pendant onto the new chain and fastened it around my neck. Then I slipped into the green dress, which fit as if made for me. Perhaps it had been. The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. A soft knock at precisely 7:30 announced Logan's arrival. When I opened the door, his eyes widened fractionally before he regained his stoic expression. You clean up well, Omega, he said, the compliment gruff but sincere. The walk to the pack house was silent, tension building with each step. Pack members we passed stared openly, whispers following in our wake. By the time we reached the Alpha's private quarters in the east wing of the pack house, my nerves were stretched to breaking point. Logan knocked once before opening a heavy wooden door and gesturing me inside. Good luck, he murmured, so quietly I almost missed it. The Alpha's dining room was nothing like I had imagined. Instead of the formal state dining room where pack business was conducted, this was a smaller, more intimate space. A round table was set for 4, a fire crackling cheerfully in the hearth. The walls were lined with bookshelves rather than the mounted trophies that decorated much of the pack house. Eleanor! Leo's excited voice broke the stillness as the little boy launched himself across the room, wrapping his arms around my legs. You came! I knelt instinctively, bringing myself to his level. Of course I came. How are you feeling? I'm okay. Daddy says I was very brave. His small face grew serious. And you were brave too. You saved me from the hot. The hot almost got both of us, I said gently, touching his nose with my finger. But we were too quick, weren't we?" He nodded solemnly before his attention shifted to something behind me. His expression brightened. "Daddy, look! Eleanor's here and she's pretty." I rose quickly, turning to find Nathaniel watching us from the doorway, his expression unreadable. He had changed into dark slacks and a fitted shirt that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders. Without the intimidating presence of the pack watching, he seemed somehow more human, though no less powerful. "So she is," he said simply, his eyes meeting mine for a brief, electric moment. A woman entered behind him, not Selena as I had feared, but the pack's housekeeper, bearing a tray of food. She set it on the table and departed with a curious glance in my direction. "Sit," Nathaniel directed, indicating a chair. "We've kept things informal tonight for Leo's sake." The meal passed in a strange, dreamlike haze. Leo chattered happily, recounting his day with childish enthusiasm, seemingly oblivious to the tension between the adults. Nathaniel asked me occasional questions, about my cabin, about how my shoulder was healing, which I answered as briefly as possible. It wasn't until dessert was served, honey cakes that made Leo squeal with delight, that Nathaniel finally addressed the elephant in the room. "Leo," he said gently, "it's time for your bath. Marta is waiting for you." The little boy pouted but obeyed, giving me a sticky hug before scampering out. As the door closed behind him, silence fell like a heavy curtain. Nathaniel rose and moved to a sideboard, pouring 2 glasses of amber liquid. He offered one to me, then took the seat beside me rather than returning to his place at the head of the table. "Why did you save him?" he asked abruptly. I blinked in surprise. "Because he needed saving. You risked your life for the son of the Alpha who rejected you." "I risked my life for a child," I corrected softly. His rank didn't matter. Nathaniel studied me intently, as though trying to solve a puzzle. "You know there are those in the pack who suspect you of involvement in what happened." My fingers tightened around my glass. "Like your mother." A flicker of surprise crossed his face at my directness. "Among others." "Why would I save him if I meant him harm?" "To ingratiate yourself, to appear the hero." He stated these theories without inflection, but I sensed he was testing me, watching for my reaction. If I wanted to ingratiate myself with the pack, there are easier ways than committing arson and risking my life, I said, unable to keep a hint of bitterness from my voice. Unexpectedly, his mouth curved in a slight smile. "Fair point." He rose and moved to the fireplace, staring into the flames. "Do you know why you were rejected, Eleanor?" The question caught me off guard. I was told I created disharmony in the pack. And do you believe that's the true reason? I hesitated, wary of a trap. It's not my place to question the Alpha's decisions. It was my father's decision, not mine, he pointed out, turning back to face me. And I'm asking for your opinion. Taking a deep breath, I chose honesty. I think I asked too many questions. I didn't conform properly. Omegas are meant to serve quietly, accept their place. I was never very good at that. Nathaniel's expression darkened. My father had very traditional views about pack hierarchy, and you don't? The words slipped out before I could stop them. A direct question to the Alpha, a breach of protocol that would have earned me punishment under the old regime. But Nathaniel merely looked thoughtful. I believe a pack's strength lies in utilizing the talents of all its members, regardless of rank. He paused, then added more softly, "And I believe you've been underestimated, Eleanor Gray." Before I could process this surprising statement, he moved back to the table, his manner shifting to something more businesslike. "Someone tried to kill my son," he said bluntly, "and they nearly succeeded. The man who left him in the shelter was likely following orders," Nathaniel interrupted. "This wasn't random, Eleanor. This was targeted, political." I frowned. But who would want to harm Leo? He's just a child. Harm Leo? Harm me? Weaken the pack, Nathaniel explained grimly. Take your pick. I've made changes since becoming Alpha, changes that not everyone approves of. The old ways had their defenders. "Like your mother," I said softly, then immediately regretted my boldness. But Nathaniel didn't deny it. My mother believes in the strict hierarchy my father enforced. She thinks I'm too progressive. His eyes locked with mine. She was particularly opposed when I suggested reviewing all rejection cases from my father's time as Alpha. My heart skipped a beat. Reviewing? I believe some wolves were rejected not because they failed the pack, but because they threatened my father's vision of absolute control. His voice was quiet, but intense. I've been searching for those unjustly exiled. I hadn't gotten to your case yet. The implications were dizzying. I struggled to find words. Are you saying you would have reversed your rejection? Based on what I've seen of you, yes. He moved closer, his voice dropping. Which brings me to why I asked you here tonight. Not just to satisfy Leo's wish to thank you. Then why? I barely recognized my own voice, breathless with anticipation or fear. I couldn't tell which. Because I need someone I can trust, he said simply. And you, Eleanor, are perhaps the only person in this pack who has proven their loyalty beyond question. You saved my son when it would have been safer, and frankly more sensible, to let him perish. I flinched at his bluntness. I need your help, he continued. I need someone who can observe without being noticed. Someone who can move through the pack seeing what others miss, because they've learned to overlook you. Someone with courage enough to run into fire. You want me to spy for you? I asked incredulously. I want you to help me protect my son and this pack, he corrected. In return, I offer you restoration to the pack, not as a rejected Omega, but as a full member under my protection. I stared at him, thoughts whirling. Why would anyone listen to me? I'm nothing in this pack. That, he said with unexpected gentleness, is exactly why they'll never see you coming. The clock on the mantel chimed 9, breaking the spell between us. Nathaniel straightened, a hint of regret crossing his features. Think about my offer, he said. You don't need to decide tonight. But I already knew my answer. Despite everything the pack had done to me, or perhaps because of it, I understood what it meant to be powerless. No child should ever be used as a pawn in power games, especially not one as innocent as Leo. I'll help, I said quietly. But not for pack status, for Leo. Something changed in Nathaniel's eyes. Respect, perhaps, or surprise. Then we begin tomorrow. Return to the pack house at noon. As Logan escorted me back to my cabin in the darkness, the emerald dress shifting around my ankles with each step, I knew I had just crossed a threshold from which there was no return. I had allied myself with the Alpha against unknown enemies powerful enough to orchestrate the murder of a child. I touched my mother's pendant, drawing strength from its familiar shape. The moon still watches, I whispered to myself, even on the darkest night. And this night, I feared, was only the beginning of the darkness to come. I arrived at the pack house precisely at noon the next day, my mind still spinning from the previous night's revelations. I wore my own simple clothes again, the emerald dress carefully stored away in my cabin. But I kept the silver chain with my mother's pendant around my neck. It felt like armor against whatever lay ahead. This time, the enforcers at the entrance nodded in recognition, one of them escorting me not to the Alpha's quarters, but to a small office tucked away in an unfamiliar corridor. Inside, I found not Nathaniel, but Logan, surrounded by stacks of papers. Right on time, he commented, gesturing to a chair. The Alpha will join us shortly. He's dealing with an unexpected visitor. I sat gingerly, curiosity gnawing at me. What is this place? Security office, Logan replied, his attention already returning to the documents before him. Where we keep records of pack incidents, territory breaches, that sort of thing. Before I could ask more questions, the door opened. Nathaniel entered, his expression tense, followed by a striking woman I immediately recognized despite never having met her. Sophia Blackwell, from the Silver Lake pack, tall and confident, with glossy dark hair and the assured posture of a born beta. The Alpha's soon-to-be mate, if pack rumors were true. Her curious gaze swept over me, then turned questioning to Nathaniel. Is this her? The Omega who saved Leo? I lowered my eyes instinctively, but not before catching the flicker of annoyance that crossed Nathaniel's face. Eleanor, he said, this is Sophia Blackwell, daughter of Alpha Blackwell from Silver Lake. Sophia, this is Eleanor Gray. To my surprise, Sophia approached and extended her hand. I wanted to thank you personally, she said. What you did was extraordinarily brave. I took her hand hesitantly, unused to such treatment from higher-ranking wolves. Anyone would have done the same. No, she said firmly. They wouldn't. Nathaniel told me the shelter was completely engulfed when his enforcers arrived. None of them attempted entry. Her eyes, a warm brown, held genuine gratitude. Leo is precious to all of us. An odd discomfort twisted in my chest at her words, the implication of her place in Leo's life, in Nathaniel's family. I pushed the feeling aside, ashamed of myself. Of course, the alpha would choose a strong beta mate. What else had I expected? Nathaniel cleared his throat. Sophia is here because she may have information relevant to our situation. Her pack has experienced similar incidents. Sophia's expression grew serious. 2 months ago, our alpha's youngest daughter was nearly drowned during what was supposed to be a supervised swim. The wolf responsible disappeared before questioning. You think it's connected? I said, the pieces clicking into place. 3 neighboring packs, 3 attempts on alpha heirs, Logan confirmed grimly. The third was Blue Mountain Pack. Their alpha son was found unconscious from wolfsbane poisoning last month. He survived, but barely. I frowned. But why? What would anyone gain from harming children? Destabilization, Nathaniel said flatly. These 3 packs, Stone Creek, Silver Lake, Blue Mountain, have recently formed stronger alliances. We've been working toward modernizing pack law, making it more equitable. Not everyone approves of these changes. The old guard, Logan added. Traditionalists who believe packs should remain isolated, with strict hierarchies and ancient laws unchanged. I processed this, thinking of how Nathaniel had mentioned his mother's disapproval of his more progressive approach. Could Selena be involved in something so terrible? I couldn't bring myself to voice the question. Sophia had no such reservations. You suspect your mother, she said to Nathaniel, her directness clearly born of familiarity. His jaw tightened. I suspect everyone until proven otherwise. My son's life is at stake. What can I do? I asked quietly, drawing their attention back to me. I'm just an Omega. No one tells me anything. That, Nathaniel said, is exactly why you're valuable. You can go places, hear things that others can't. People speak freely around those they consider beneath notice. The words stung, though I knew they were true. There's something else, Logan said, sliding a folder toward me. We found this in the ruins of the shelter after the fire died down. Inside was a charred piece of fabric, part of a scarf or bandana, with a symbol barely visible through the soot stains. 3 slashes, like claw marks, in blood red. What is it? I asked, something about the symbol sending a chill down my spine. The mark of the red claw, Sophia said grimly. A secret society of traditionalists who believe wolf packs should return to the pure ways of our ancestors. No human contact, no modernization, strict hierarchy enforcement. They've been rumored to exist for decades, but until recently they were just shadows and whispers. Now they're targeting children, Nathaniel added, his voice tight with controlled rage. You think whoever left Leo in that shelter was part of this red claw, I said slowly, the horror of it sinking in. We know they have infiltrated multiple packs, Logan confirmed. What we don't know is who in our pack might be involved. Nathaniel leaned forward, his green eyes intent on mine. That's where you come in, Eleanor. We need you to be our eyes and ears. Your rejection actually makes you perfect for this. You can move between worlds, return to pack activities as if being reinstated, but keep alert for anything suspicious. Reinstated? I echoed, confused. A smile, the first genuine one I'd seen from him, briefly transformed Nathaniel's face. As of this morning, your rejection has been officially reversed. The announcement will be made at tonight's pack meeting. The news left me speechless. After 6 months of isolation and years of marginalization before that, I was to be welcomed back, just like that? Reading my expression, Nathaniel's smile faded. It's not just for the mission, Eleanor. The reversal is permanent, regardless of whether you help us. My father's rejection was unjust, and I've corrected it. Thank you, I managed, unsure how else to respond to this life-altering pronouncement. Sophia watched our interaction with curious eyes. Eleanor will need protection, she said. Once she starts asking questions, she could become a target herself. I've thought of that, Nathaniel replied, not looking away from me. Which is why she'll be moving into the pack house, the east wing, near my quarters. This was too much. I can't possibly... It's already arranged, he cut me off. Logan will help you move your belongings this afternoon. I glanced at Logan, who gave me a small nod that managed to be both apologetic and firm. I was being given no choice in this matter. There's one more thing you should know, Nathaniel continued, his tone growing more serious. We have reason to believe the Red Claw may be planning something at the Interpack Council meeting next week. Leaders from all 12 regional packs will be gathered in one place. A perfect target. Including my father, Sophia added. And Nathaniel, of course. What exactly are they planning? I asked. That, Nathaniel said grimly, is what we need to find out. The meeting concluded with specific instructions. I was to attend all pack functions, reconnect with other wolves, listen for anything unusual, and report directly to Nathaniel or Logan. No one else was to know my true purpose, not even trusted enforcers. As Logan led me back toward the entrance so I could gather my few belongings from the cabin, we passed through the main hall just as Selena Stone was descending the grand staircase. She froze mid-step at the sight of us, her elegant features hardening. What is she doing here again? She demanded, not bothering to acknowledge me directly. Logan straightened, his response formal. The Alpha has reversed Eleanor's rejection. She's being reinstated to the pack. The shock on Selena's face would have been satisfying if it hadn't quickly morphed into calculated fury. Has he indeed? How progressive of him. Her cold gaze finally turned to me. I suppose saving my grandson has earned you special privileges. It wasn't about earning anything, I said quietly. It was about doing what was right. Something dangerous flashed in her eyes. You presume to lecture me on what is right, Omega. This pack has stood strong for 8 generations because we respect tradition and natural order. Wolves like you, who question, who disrupt, weaken us all. Mother. Nathaniel's voice cracked like a whip as he emerged from a side corridor. Enough. Selena's expression smoothed instantly, though the tension remained in her rigid posture. Nathaniel, darling, I was just expressing my concern about rushing to overturn your father's careful decisions. My father's decision to reject Eleanor was wrong, he stated flatly. I've corrected it. The matter is closed. Of course, she conceded with practiced grace. You are Alpha now. It's your right to experiment with new approaches. Her gaze flicked meaningfully to me. Though I hope you're considering the impact on your arrangement with Silver Lake. Sophia is here, isn't she, to finalize the mating agreement? I felt a chill at her words, though I kept my expression neutral. Of course the Alpha would still proceed with his politically advantageous mating. Why had I let myself forget that, even for a moment? Nathaniel's jaw tightened. My personal arrangements are not up for public discussion, Mother. Of course, she repeated, a knowing smile playing at her lips as she glided past us. Nothing ever changes the course of destiny, does it? Blood will always tell. When she was gone, I released a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Nathaniel's expression was stormy as he turned to Logan. Get Eleanor settled in the East Wing. The Aspen Suite should be prepared by now. The Aspen Suite? Logan's eyebrows rose. That's the diplomatic quarters. It's secure and private, Nathaniel replied tersely, and no one will question a newly reinstated pack member being given comfortable accommodations as compensation for saving the future Alpha. With a nod to me that somehow managed to convey both authority and apology, Nathaniel strode away, leaving me with more questions than answers. The Aspen Suite turned out to be larger than my entire cabin, a spacious bedroom with attached sitting room, decorated in soothing blues and greens. Large windows overlooked the forest, and the furnishings were simple but beautiful. It was more luxury than I had ever known. This is too much, I protested, as Logan helped bring in my few belongings, some clothes, books, and personal items that looked pathetically shabby in such surroundings. Alpha's orders, Logan replied, though not unkindly. Besides, it serves the purpose. Anyone who might be involved with the Red Claw would expect Nathaniel to reward you publicly while keeping you at a distance. This helps maintain your cover. After Logan left, I stood alone in the center of my new quarters, feeling disoriented and overwhelmed. In less than 48 hours, my life had transformed completely. From rejected Omega in a remote cabin to reinstated pack member in the Alpha's wing, trusted with a dangerous secret mission. As I unpacked my meager possessions, I came across the emerald dress from the previous night, carefully folded in its box. On impulse, I lifted it to my face, breathing in its scent. Beneath the silk and packaging, I detected something else, a faint trace of pine and spice that I recognized instantly as Nathaniel's scent. The realization that the dress had been in his possession, perhaps even selected by him personally, sent an inappropriate flutter through my stomach. I quickly repacked it, chiding myself for such foolish thoughts. Nathaniel was the Alpha, engaged to a suitable beta female. Whatever kindness he showed me was born of gratitude for saving his son and necessity for his investigation, nothing more. A knock at my door startled me from these dangerous musings. When I opened it, I found a beaming Leo with a harried-looking nanny hovering behind him. "Eleanor!" he cried delightedly. "Daddy says you're staying with us now. Will you read me a story? Please, please, please." The nanny, Marta, I recalled, gave me an apologetic look. "I'm sorry. He insisted on seeing you once he heard you'd moved in." "It's fine," I assured her, unable to resist Leo's enthusiasm. "I'd be happy to read a story." As I settled on the window seat with Leo curled against my side, his favorite book open between us, I couldn't help but wonder at the strange turn my life had taken. From outcast to the Alpha's son's favorite storyteller in the span of 2 days. What I didn't realize then was that the story unfolding around us would prove far more dangerous and have far higher stakes than any tale in Leo's storybook. The Luna's Choice. The next week passed in a blur of activity as I settled into my dual role. Publicly, the reinstated Omega who had earned the Alpha's gratitude. Privately, the silent observer searching for conspirators. The pack's reaction to my new status was mixed. Curiosity from most, resentment from some, particularly River and her circle. They watched me with cold, calculating eyes whenever our paths crossed, though none dared confront me directly now that I lived under the Alpha's protection. Each night, I reported my observations to Nathaniel in his study, a warm, book-lined room where strategy was plotted over cups of tea that grew cold as we talked. I found myself looking forward to these meetings more than I should, drawn to his sharp mind and unexpected flashes of dry humor. Occasionally, Sophia would join us, her insights into neighboring packs proving valuable. I tried not to notice how beautiful she looked sitting beside Nathaniel, how naturally they complemented each other. The Interpack Council meeting loomed closer, and still we had no concrete evidence of the Red Claw's plans, just whispers and suspicions. I had overheard snippets of conversation suggesting discontent with Nathaniel's leadership style, complaints about his dilution of tradition, but nothing that pointed to specific threats. Until 3 days before the council meeting, when everything changed. I was in the packhouse garden with Leo, who had taken to following me whenever his schedule allowed. We were playing a simple game of hide and seek, my heart clenching at the innocence of his delight in a game that had nearly cost him his life, when I heard voices from the other side of the hedge. I signaled Leo to stay quiet, recognizing River's distinctive tone. "It's happening at the council meeting," she was saying to someone I couldn't see. "All 3 Alphas in one place, Stone, Blackwell, and Morris. Once they're dealt with, the others will fall in line." "And you're certain about your role?" came a second voice, male, unfamiliar. "I know exactly what I need to do," River replied confidently. "The Red Claw will rise, and the old ways will be restored. No more of this ridiculous equality nonsense. Ranks exist for a reason. Good. The others are in position. Don't fail us." The conversation ended, footsteps retreating in opposite directions. I remained frozen. Leo clutched protectively against me until I was certain they were gone. "Why are we hiding from Miss River?" Leo whispered, his eyes wide with childish concern. I forced a smile. "It's still part of our game, sweetheart. But now we need to find your daddy. It's very important." Nathaniel was in an enforcer meeting when we burst in, Leo's hand clasped tightly in mine. One look at my face and he immediately called for a break, dismissing everyone but Logan. "River is involved," I said without preamble once the doors were closed. "I just overheard her discussing the Red Claw's plans for the council meeting. They're targeting you, Alpha Blackwell, and Alpha Morris." Nathaniel's expression hardened as I recounted the conversation. When I finished, he knelt to Leo's level, his voice gentle but firm. "Leo, I need you to go with Logan for a little while. It's very important that you stay with him, all right?" Leo nodded solemnly, sensing the gravity of the situation. After Logan let him out, Nathaniel turned back to me, all gentleness gone from his face. "We need to move now, before they realize we know." He strode to a cabinet and unlocked it, revealing a collection of maps. "The council meeting is being held at Silver Lake territory. We'll need to coordinate with Alpha Blackwell's security team." "What about River?" I asked. "Shouldn't we bring her in for questioning?" Nathaniel shook his head. "Not yet. If we move too soon, the others might go to ground. We need to catch them all, including whoever she was speaking with." She said the others are in position. There must be conspirators in multiple packs. "Or multiple conspirators in our pack," Nathaniel said grimly. "Which brings me to a difficult question, Eleanor. Did you recognize the male voice?" I hesitated, understanding the implication. "You're wondering if it could have been someone close to you, someone with access to pack security details." He didn't deny it, his green eyes troubled. "I have to consider every possibility." "It wasn't Logan," I said with certainty. The voice was different, older, I think, but I couldn't place it. Relief flickered across his features before his mask of control returned. "We need to set a trap. Let them think their plan is proceeding, but be prepared." For the next 2 days, we worked tirelessly on counter-strategy, bringing in only those we absolutely trusted. Sophia arrived with her father's security chief. Maps were studied, contingencies planned. Through it all, I watched River, noting who she spoke with, where she went. She showed no sign of suspecting she'd been overheard, her confidence growing as the council meeting approached. The night before we were to leave for Silver Lake territory, I was summoned to Nathaniel's private quarters. Not the study where we usually met, but his personal rooms. I hesitated at the door, suddenly aware of how inappropriate this might appear. Sophia opened the door before I could knock, her expression grim. "Good. You're here. We have a problem." Inside, Nathaniel paced before the fireplace, tension radiating from his powerful frame. He stopped when he saw me, something like relief crossing his features. "My mother is missing," he said without preamble. "She was supposed to attend a meeting with the pack elders this afternoon. She never arrived." The implications hit me like a physical blow. "You think she's involved with the Red Claw?" "It makes terrible sense," Sophia said quietly. "She opposed all of Nathaniel's reforms. She maintained connections with traditionalists and other packs, and she had access to everything: security plans, council details. And she knew about Leo's schedule the day of the fire," I added, the pieces falling into place with sickening clarity. Nathaniel's expression was carved from stone. If she arranged an attack on her own grandson— None of us finished the thought. The betrayal was too enormous, too painful to voice aloud. "We leave for the council meeting in the morning," he finally said. "Security has been doubled. Logan will remain here with Leo and a team of our most trusted enforcers." "I should stay too," I suggested, "to help protect Leo." Nathaniel shook his head. "I need you with me, Eleanor. Your instincts have proven invaluable. Besides, if River is part of this, she'll expect to see you at my side as the heroic Omega I'm publicly rewarding." Our eyes met across the room, and something unspoken passed between us. Something that made Sophia glance away with a small, sad smile. "I'll check the latest security reports," she said, moving toward the door. "You two should get some rest. Tomorrow will be challenging." After she left, silence fell between us, heavy with things unsaid. "I never thanked you properly," Nathaniel finally spoke, his voice low. "Not just for saving Leo, but for everything since. You've risked your safety repeatedly for a pack that rejected you." "Not the whole pack," I corrected softly. "Just some individuals within it." He stepped closer, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from him. "When this is over, when Leo is safe, and the threat is eliminated, there are things we need to discuss. My heart hammered against my ribs. What things? Things like why I can't stop thinking about you, he said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. Things like how in the middle of this crisis, I find myself distracted by the way the light catches in your hair, or how your scent calms me even when everything is falling apart. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. This couldn't be happening. What about Sophia? I managed. The alliance with Silver Lake, a shadow of regret crossed his features. Sophia knows, has known for days. She's remarkably understanding. I don't understand, I whispered. He reached out slowly, giving me time to retreat, and brushed a strand of hair from my face. Sometimes fate has other plans than the ones we make for ourselves, Eleanor. Sometimes we find strength and partnership where we least expect it. Before I could respond, before I could process what his words might mean, a sharp knock at the door pulled us apart. Logan entered, his expression urgent. We've got a problem. 2 enforcers are missing from their posts, and River can't be found anywhere in the pack house. The moment shattered, reality rushing back in. Nathaniel stepped away, his alpha authority settling over him like armor. Lock down the pack house. No one enters or leaves without direct authorization from me. Double the guards on Leo's room. As Logan rushed to comply, Nathaniel turned back to me. All trace of our personal conversation gone. Get some rest. We leave at dawn. That night, sleep eluded me. I stood at my window, watching the moon rise over the forest, the same forest where, just over a week ago, I had been an outcast, resigned to a life of solitude. Now I stood at the center of pack politics, trusted by the Alpha, possibly cared for by him. It seemed impossible, like a dream from which I would soon awaken. My fingers found my mother's pendant, tracing the familiar crescent. Even in your darkest night, I murmured, remember that the moon still watches. Dawn came too soon. The journey to Silver Lake territory was tense, our convoy of vehicles moving swiftly through the early morning mist. Nathaniel rode in the lead car with me beside him, his face grim and focused. Enforcers surrounded us, alert for any threat. The council meeting was to be held in Silver Lake's Grand Lodge, a massive log structure overlooking the lake that gave the territory its name. Security checkpoints had been established at every approach, with wolves from all 3 allied packs working together. Remember the plan, Nathaniel said quietly, as we approached the final checkpoint. Stay close to me. Watch for River or any of her known associates. Inside, the Great Hall was already filling with delegates from the 12 regional packs. I recognized some from descriptions. Alpha Morris of Blue Mountain, a stern older man with silver at his temples, Beta representatives from distant territories, council officials in formal attire. Sophia stood with her father, Alpha Blackwell, both of them nodding solemnly as we entered. As we made our way through the crowd, I scanned continuously for River or Selena, anxiety building with each passing moment. Something felt wrong, but I couldn't place what. Then I saw her, River, standing near a side entrance, her posture too casual, her eyes too alert. She was waiting for something, or someone. I touched Nathaniel's arm lightly, directing his attention with a subtle nod. He caught on immediately, signaling to his security team. What happened next unfolded in a blur of motion and sound. The side doors burst open, admitting a group of wolves led by a figure I recognized with shock. Vincent Stone, Nathaniel's supposedly dead father, the former Alpha who had rejected me. Behind him came Selena, her face alight with triumphant certainty. For the Red Claw, she cried. For tradition. Chaos erupted. Security teams converged. Delegates scattered, and somewhere in the confusion, I lost sight of Nathaniel. Fear clutched at my chest as I pushed through the crowd, desperate to find him. I spotted him finally, locked in confrontation with his father at the center of the hall. Vincent, older but still powerful, his face twisted with disdain as he faced the son who had undone his legacy. You've weakened the packs with your progressive nonsense, Vincent snarled. Equality between ranks, alliances with former enemies? You've forgotten what makes wolves strong. No, father, Nathaniel replied, his voice steady despite the betrayal facing him. I've remembered what truly makes us strong. Unity, loyalty, compassion. Weakness, Vincent spat. And for that weakness, you'll pay. He lunged forward, a silver dagger gleaming in his hand, wolfsbane coated, lethal even to an alpha. I moved without thinking, throwing myself between them. Pain blossomed in my side as the blade found me instead of its intended target. I heard Nathaniel's roar of rage, felt strong arms catch me as I fell. Through darkening vision, I saw enforcers swarming Vincent, Selena screaming as she was restrained. Eleanor! Nathaniel's voice seemed to come from very far away. Stay with me. Please, stay with me. I tried to speak, to tell him I was sorry, but darkness claimed me before the words could form. I woke to the sound of soft breathing and the sensation of someone holding my hand. Moonlight streamed through unfamiliar windows, illuminating Nathaniel's sleeping form in a chair beside my bed. I was in the PAX healing center, bandages wrapped tightly around my torso. As if sensing my wakefulness, Nathaniel stirred, his eyes opening to find mine. For a moment, he simply stared, as if not trusting what he saw. Then he brought my hand to his lips, pressing a fervent kiss against my knuckles. You almost died, he said hoarsely. Taking a blade meant for me. What happened? My voice was barely a whisper. The Red Claw is finished. My father and mother are in custody, along with River and the other conspirators. The council stands united behind our alliance. Leo? A smile touched his lips. Safe. Asking for you every hour. He's taken to calling you his moon lady. I smiled weakly, because of my pendant. Perhaps. Nathaniel's expression grew serious. Or perhaps because he senses what I've known since you ran into fire to save him. What I should have recognized immediately. What's that? I asked, my heart quickening despite my weakness. That you are meant to be our Luna. He leaned closer, his eyes holding mine, my Luna. If you'll have me. I thought of all that had happened, the rejection, the fire, the conspiracy, the blade I had taken without hesitation. Each step, each choice, had led me here, to this moment that seemed impossible just days ago. The pack would never accept an Omega as Luna, I whispered, giving voice to my deepest fear. They already have, he replied gently. Your courage, your loyalty, your willingness to sacrifice yourself, these are the qualities of a true Luna. Rank means nothing compared to the strength of your heart. Outside, the moon hung full and bright, watching as it always had through my darkest nights. But now, for the first time, I could see the promise of dawn. Yes, I said, squeezing his hand with what little strength I had. I'll be your Luna. His smile, radiant, relieved, filled with promise, was like the first light breaking through a long, cold winter. As his lips met mine, gentle yet filled with unspoken emotion, I knew with sudden certainty that I had finally found my place. Not as a rejected Omega, not as a pack outcast, but as the Luna who had run through fire to find her way home.